we are aware that the Lord is doing something. We have been aware of this since the beginning of, and some have been aware before, the beginning of the pandemic. Not necessarily of what God is doing in the world, but what he's doing in his body, right? There's been a shifting, a realignment, a coming into an understanding of that which has been allowed, that was wrong, and that which has been disallowed, but is actually a realignment, I'll say, right? A readjustment that God himself is doing. And some have, because of where they have been placed in the body, they have misconstrued where we are to be. And so they want people to go back to what was, because they felt like, oh, that was stopped because of the pandemic. So we need to get that back. We need to begin to do that again. And in some cases it may be, but not the way that it was done. Because even in the pandemic, the Lord showed us some people worship church. They worship church. They idolize church. And they idolize church the way it was done. Okay? But the Lord, during the pandemic, had revealed to some people that their worship was not him, but unto church. Even those that have led, that was set in the body by the Lord to lead, they've begun to idolize and worship the way they were doing it. I believe that the Lord is, what he's doing is bringing us back to faith. And what I mean by that is, we could do something, we could begin something because God said it, right? Or we can begin something because we believe, or we have an expectation of what God said. One, it becomes legalistic, and it's more so we're doing it under the law, or to say God, under a law, that God said it, so I'm doing that. But yet you have no expectation, because so if you have no expectation in the doing, right, you may have an expectation when you begin. Let's say that you have an expectation, but in the midst of the doing it, you stop expecting, or you stop believing something. You believe God, you believe in God, but concerning what he's giving you to do, you stop believing, you stop expecting, so you just start doing. And then there are those who begin in faith and continue in faith. But it looks like, because what you're believing that the Lord said the purpose of this thing is, and what it is supposed to do, now you have to be encouraged. In your stand, you have to be encouraged that God does not want you to change. He doesn't want you to change it. He doesn't want you to change it to become relevant. He don't want you to change it to draw more people to what is done, because it seemed, that's not what everybody's doing now. He doesn't want you. God is bringing us back to faith. Believe what I said and expect what I say. And he says, him that eat unto the Lord, right? Anything that's done apart from faith is sin. Sometimes, again, We have done things, but they had nothing to do with a God said and a God expectation. These three remain: faith, hope, and love. Faith, hope, and love. We're to begin in faith, and we are to end in the love of God. And so the enemy knows that in between, if you stop expecting, you probably won't end in love. You could end something in bitterness, resentment, disappointment, because you started with God said, and I believe what God said, but then you stop expecting what God said, and you began, in the midst of a God said, you begin to do something that felt better to your flesh or felt better to your soul, meaning it made more sense. It made you feel like you were relevant still, and the Lord is bringing us back to faith. Whatever is not done in faith, it is sin. There are some things that we have begun to do the after or post pandemic that has nothing to do with faith. It has to do with making ends meet, and we call it ministry. And it has to do with continuing or wanting to be in that same position we were before, and it has nothing to do with God said, and we say the Lord said to do it. Well, are we doing it in the timing that God said to do it? Have we allowed him to prepare us in doing? An example, we look at Gideon, and there's so much to the life of this man, in the time, the era that he was in, and all that. But I'm just looking at the man. The Lord told him to do something, that he was going to do something with him, right? Before we get to that point, and Gideon goes through this whole fleecing thing with God, right? But then after he's convinced, see, he didn't just say, okay, I'm going to do it because you said it. He's like, no, if it is you, if you are the God that is able, the God that is over nature, the God that is able to make atmospheres respond to his word, if you are that God, right? So then we had that fleecing situation. Then I'll listen to you. I'll trust. I'll do it, because I realize your ability, then your capability, your power, your authority over that which you have created. If you are the God that has created everything, right? And during the fleecing thing, he saw that's what it was. Okay, so all right, went through that. Then he said, okay, I'll do it. Here's the interesting part. The Lord said, okay, before we go here, I want you to do something for me. Now, this had nothing to do with what the Lord was calling him to do, the thing that the Lord wanted him to do. Tear down this Asherah pole that your father has erected out of fear. Deal with that first. So Gideon had to deal with something that had an authority or a place in his life that would call out his name and all of those things that he had given authority to, not necessarily because he trusted and believed in it, but because his father had set it up, and therefore it had a level of authority over his life and what he do, right? I'm just saying. And so the Lord said, deal with that first. Deal with that. And Gideon did it, and he did it afraid, and his father want to call him something else and attach another name to him. Right? Fine. Whatever. He obeyed the Lord. So here it is. I obeyed God. That's not the end. That's the beginning. That's the beginning. And then throughout we see, in preparation for what the Lord wants to do, him to do, what he wants to do through Gideon. See, that was something that he told Gideon to do for him. Okay? Tearing down that Asherah pole. Then that the beginning. Then the Lord begins to prepare him for what he wants to do through Gideon. See, we skip over stuff and we make the thing tearing down the Astros pole, or whatever that pole was, tearing that down was the thing that God was calling him to do. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. That was before the process even began. Why? The Lord was preparing to posture Gideon in a place of faith. Not just, oh, God told me. But Gideon began to expect, because the Lord was going to tell him to do some strange things, seemingly. We would call them strange. And those things seemed like they had nothing to do with what God was preparing him, Gideon, this body, that God was going to do a thing through. It looked like it had nothing to do with it, but it did have everything to do with it. But Gideon had to stay in faith. During the gathering of the men, the way the Lord wanted to do it, the dividing, the shifting, the weeding these people out, not because they were bad, but because they were afraid. And so if they were afraid, y'all know when we get afraid, you'll get, people will snap because they're afraid. People will not respond because they're afraid. People will hurt somebody because they're afraid. Okay? So the Lord said, let them go home. First, let's choose out of those that want to. All right. So those that want to, they said, okay. Those that didn't, they went home. They still would benefit from what God was going to do through Gideon, right? So they weren't disqualified just because they didn't want to fight. So then you have those that, they said they want to fight. They wanted to fight, but the Lord, like, okay, some of them, they're scared. So I'm going to set up a scenario, and I want you to obey me, Gideon, and telling them this, and I want you to watch. Those that did this, that licked up like a dog, versus those that did not. Okay, there's a division. Send those home. Here's God still setting it up. By the time he was finished, this army was so small. Again, Gideon had to continue in faith. In faith. After this, they see the amount of people that are gathered to fight against them. The Lord said, okay, take your servant with you. This particular name, I don't even, it meant branch or something. Take him with you and go down. Now I want you to hear something. And God had given his enemies a dream, one of the guys a dream, and it was like, oh my goodness, this just means that God, the God of Gideon, is going to basically give us over to him. We're going to be conquered. So God had put fear in the hearts of these people by way of a dream. And he let Gideon hear it, eavesdrop. Right? Gideon goes back. You know what I mean? So fear is already in the camp. So then the Lord tells Gideon to gather these pots. And I want you to put within the pot. Go read the story, right? This is how it was not by the sword. It was not by the skill of the hand of men in battle, and they're anointed and they can fight and they can. It was not any of that. The Lord was literally going to just do this through Gideon responding to him. And what the Lord told him to do, the people had imagined, because the sounds that they heard of the pots cracking, you got to look at, they were in a valley. So at a certain point in there, the sound that echoed echo of this part. It sounded like a great army, and half of the people ran. Fight or flight. They say we fly. We fight, right? Because we can't win. Those that were there were overtaken by the number, right? God balanced it out. You look at so the way that the Lord will bring about a thing, and how he would cause he would wean out. And I do believe, again I say, during the pandemic, God was weaning, revealing, exposing. So now he's aligning in his body, and he's shifting things, and we look at some things as judgment meaning God gonna kill it, no, you go to court, there's a judgment. The judgment is either innocent or guilty. There are some that the Lord is going to reveal that we thought were guilty of something. He's revealing that they're innocent. There are some that we thought, because of it looked like God was using them, and that they were guilty. Guilty of what? Not continuing in faith. The thing that they built was not built in faith. Some of it was mixed. And so God in his mercy will bring them back. If they respond, as Gideon, if they respond, will bring them back to a place of faith. So it's going to look different. Faith in what? His power, his ability, what he said that he wants to do, right? But the other things has to be exposed as not being done in faith. It has to be exposed as the hand of men, being done by the hand of men. It wasn't the power of God. It was the ability of man. So yeah, this is why I believe that we are, and the Lord wanted me to share that the Lord is bringing us to a place of faith, or back to. So don't be afraid of what it looked like. That it looks like it's less people. It looks like we don't have the resources, because Gideon, the army, if you look at it, they didn't have all these swords and all what it take to kill this particular army. It looked like they didn't have the weapons to match. They didn't need the weapons to match. They didn't need it, because the Lord was being God, the God who can speak to a person in dreams, the God who can send an evil spirit, the God, do you understand what I'm saying, who would send an angel before an army, one angel before an army, and already, kill the army before the people, his people actually get there, right? This is a God who can recover, cause you to recover all, when we are aligned the way that he wants us to. So yeah. So even if it doesn't look like it doesn't look like what you thought. It doesn't seem like it should. You seem like you don't have, and you've lost a lot of things. So how can God do what he said he was going to do? Even if I go back to the pattern, even if I go back to the blueprint, how can he do it with, I've lost so much? If you stay in faith, you'll see your God do what he always intended to do through you. He will be made known that he is the God that spoke it, and so it is.